Jumane D. Williams, a New York City public advocate, stood before a microphone in the spring of 2020 and gave his community permission to say something profound. I am not okay. I am tired. I am tired of racism. Around the same time, a CEO of a major company admitted something startling. He had worked alongside his chief financial officer, a black man, for years, yet had no sense of the daily emotional toll his colleague faced just navigating life. This disconnect happens because society usually frames racism as an abstract political or social issue, but the lived reality is very different. For those experiencing it, racism operates like a chronic physical illness. Author and diversity expert Mary Frances Winters diagnosed this specific condition. She calls it Black fatigue, the extreme physical, mental, and spiritual exhaustion caused by repeated variations of stress, which is then passed down from generation to generation. This diagnostic approach shifts the focus. It identifies the system itself as a direct physical threat to human survival. In the spring of 2020, a highly contagious virus swept across the globe. The damage was not distributed equally. Black and brown people died at 2 to 4 times the rate of white people, while simultaneously facing higher rates of job loss and essential worker exposure. During that same public health crisis, over a compressed 30-day window, the public watched the killings of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd. The Black community was already operating at a heightened level of stress from the pandemic. These highly visible, violent deaths acted as a compound trauma on an already weakened population. These tragedies sit on a historical continuum. Modern events link directly to a timeline of violence, stretching from the 1955 lynching of Emmett Till to the 2012 killing of Trayvon Martin. The global protests that followed were the inevitable systemic immune response of a demographic that simply could not endure any more accumulated trauma. While the high-profile tragedies trigger the acute crises, the chronic nature of Black fatigue comes from the quiet, everyday environmental stressors that constantly assault individuals. This illustration maps the taxonomy of stress, showing how Black fatigue is fed by interconnected societal failures. Looking closely at the lower leaves and branches, we see the immediate daily symptoms: microaggressions, pervasive stereotypes, and racism in the workplace. Moving higher up the tree, the diagram outlines deeper socioeconomic variants compounding that stress, like environmental racism, food deserts, and economic inequities. The illustration details the physical toll. Chronic stress alters biology, leading to severe health disparities and lower life expectancies, and disproportionate disease death rates. Following these symptoms to their origin point, the root cause feeding this entire ecosystem of exhaustion is explicitly labeled at the bottom: systemic racism. Navigating a toxic environment day after day biologically wears down the body. Systemic racism operates as a literal pre-existing condition. In response to the outcry in 2020, organizations woke up overnight. They issued statements of solidarity, scheduled all-employee town halls, and pledged millions to diversity programs. These initiatives often fail as cures. These programs frequently prioritize comfortable, broad diversity topics, which obscures the specific racial issues unique to Black people. To make matters worse, companies often lean on their Black employees to lead these initiatives, asking them to constantly educate their peers. This request directly exacerbates the very fatigue they are trying to solve. Performative allyship and generalized corporate programs offer a superficial fix. They ultimately prolong the chronic condition of Black fatigue. To actually treat the condition, the burden of work must shift away from the exhausted victims and onto the white majority. The treatment requires white people to move beyond their own internalized guilt and claims of sublime ignorance. They have to become active anti-racists. This means becoming power brokers for systemic change, actively dismantling the roots of inequity to stop the production of stress at its source. It starts by listening to the plea Jumane Williams made and giving Black people the space to simply say, "I am not okay," without fear of backlash. The final objective is a just world where the pathogen of systemic racism is eradicated forever.